the ark.
These laws were written to describe the plan of salvation. They were a type that pointed to Jesus. They were connected with the sanctuary service, with the priests, with the animals, with the sacrifices. All of these laws pointed to Jesus Christ. He was the Lamb. He was the priest. He was the sacrifice. He was the temple. All of these laws were to be met or fulfilled in Jesus, and they were.
Sometimes people look at the Old Testament sacrificial system and they're aghast and says, that's terrible. How could they kill these little animals, innocent animals? The truth of the matter is that the people of Israel had a very graphic example of what sin does to life.
Paul, in fact, calls Jesus our Passover Lamb. The book of Revelation uses the word lamb over and over again when talking about Christ and His great sacrifice for our sins.
Well, that's the very point. How could we kill the Son of God?
So the Ten Commandment moral law is eternal. It defines right and wrong. The ceremonial law pointed men and women in the Old Testament forward to the coming of Jesus and His sacrifice.
It's the ark, it's the box of the covenant. It's the ark of the covenant. What's the significance of the ark? Well, the covenant agreement. And the basis of that covenant agreement was God's holy Ten Commandment law, written by God on tablets of stone.
Ancient peoples understood a covenant to be an agreement between two groups of people, usually a conquering power and one that was conquered, or one that was preeminent and the other one that was in agreement but less powerful. The interesting thing is that a covenant is an agreement. It is a contract, if you will. And so God made a contract with the people of Israel. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 12 and 13, we're told that God's 10 commandments are His covenant with His people.
But this part of the Bible, God wrote with His own finger, and it was on tablets. Now the purpose of this, we know from the ancient Near East, other cultures, when there was a treaty between a greater king and a lesser king or something like that, then they would have a covenant treaty document which was supposed to be deposited in the temple or some other place of the lesser king to remind him and his people of their covenant obligations. So this is exactly what was going to happen. Here was the treaty document to be kept in the sanctuary of the Israelites as the witness to them of their obligations to be loyal to God.
God spoke to the children of Israel there at the base of Mount Sinai, and He said, okay, these are the terms of the covenant. And 3 times the children of Israel said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And then God says, are you sure? And all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. Are you sure? He presents the terms of the covenant to them again. All that the Lord has spoken, 3 times we will do.
It wasn't just two equals coming together, but it was a greater party giving this to the lesser party. So now we have Moses receiving the covenant document, wonderful thing from the Lord of the universe. They're going to be totally safe. God is going to be with them. And they have promised all that the Lord has said we will do and be obedient. They accepted the covenant voluntarily. Then Moses goes up into the mountain after that. And the people demanded from Aaron that they have some tangible evidence of who was leading them. And so Aaron made this idol. Now it was supposed to be an idol of God, the true God. He says, here are the gods, or here's the God that let you out of the land of Egypt. And they had a feast to the Lord. But they were using idolatry, something the people could relate to, worship the people could relate to. But God couldn't relate to it, and that was the important thing.
As Moses came down Mount Sinai, so thrilled with holding the very law of God in his hands, he was absolutely amazed. He was absolutely horrified. He heard music, he saw dancing, he saw the golden calf that had been set up, and as he came there, his heart dropped.
Moses, as a result of realizing that they had broken the command and covenant with God, took and threw those commandments and broke them, illustrating and symbolizing that this is what they had done to the relationship, the covenant, the commandments of God.
Just after, the ink was hardly dry on the covenant document, so to speak. Of course, God did it in stone, but it had just happened. And here they did this terrible thing. dancing around the golden calf, reveling, having this, honoring through idolatry the Lord who was offended by that very thing.
And so you have an agreement here, you have a covenant, you have an arrangement. God will be their God, and they will be His people. The problem is that the old covenant failed. Not because there was something wrong with the promises of God or the terms of the covenant, which was the Ten Commandment law, but because there was something wrong with the promises of the people. You actually find that in the book of Hebrews. It says the new covenant is founded on better promises. And that lets us know that it wasn't the promises of God that were faulty, it was the promises of the people.
It's kind of fascinating to me that the Ten Commandment law was given on a mountain, Mount Sinai.
And many years later, Jesus brings His disciples to the Sermon on the Mount and is gathered by thousands of other people. And there He explains the true spirit of the law.
And Jesus enunciates that law, describes that law in relevant, practical, living terms on another mountain, the Mount of Beatitudes.
In fact, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus said, I haven't come to do away with the law, but I've come to fill it up, fulfill it, to fill it up, to fill up the full measure of what the law really means.
Well, how did Jesus fulfill the law? By living it out. Did Jesus come to do away with the law that said, thou shalt not kill? Not at all. But Jesus took the law, thou shalt not kill, beyond the physical act of killing. And Jesus said, if you get anger in your heart, you have broken that law.
You're breaking that law when you get angry with your brother, when you get mean with your brother, when you insult your brother. That is the spirit of the law.
So anger in the heart leads to fighting, it leads to conflict between people, and it ultimately can lead to killing. So Jesus said, deal with the root in your heart. Jesus didn't come to do away with the law that said, thou shalt not commit adultery. He said, if you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery already.
It is thinking lustfully or looking lustfully about that. That breaks the spirit of the law, because it takes your mind away. It just breaks your own spirit, and it diminishes the other person in the process. That is respecting the spirit of the law by staying away from those tendencies versus simply staying away from the crime.
And so Jesus talked about moral purity. That does not mean that anger is the same as killing. Not at all, because killing has social consequences. It takes a life. But what Jesus' point is that the Ten Commandment law, thou shalt not kill, goes beyond the physical act to the very heart of the matter.